The Word We All Want is an evangelistic Bible overview, a way of introducing people to Jesus by looking at the Bible story as a whole. And it begins actually at the end of the story. One of the great ways of engaging with people is to talk about their dissatisfaction with the world as it is and the world that they would like to live in. And of course, what we discover in the Bible story is that that is the world that God is creating through the Lord Jesus Christ. And so we start at the end with the world that God has promised, a world where everything is made new, a world without tears, without pain, without suffering, and without death. But then we look at how that world was glimpsed in the ministry of Jesus as he fed the poor, as he healed the sick, as he raised the dead. We see Jesus giving us a glimpse of that world that we would all love to live in. So that's a great way of engaging with people. But then, of course, we begin to see how actually we're part of the problem. We're part of the reason why the world is not as it is meant to be. We also look, of course, at how, although Jesus is creating this wonderful world, he actually ends up dying, and we look at why his death is so integral to the story and God's purpose to create this world. The other thing about it is that running right through the story, of course, is God's promise of a people who know him, living in his world of blessing. And one of the things that means is that many ways, often when we present the gospel, we emphasize grace, and which is really important and central, and we might say it's not about doing good works, it's not about going to church. And then when people become Christians, we say, well, actually, now you've got to go to church, and that can be a bit confusing. But if you present the story of how God is saving a people, then you're inviting people to become part of God's people. And so the church is actually not sort of peripheral to the gospel message, but actually central to what Jesus is doing in the world and the world that God is creating. And I think that's a great help for us as we do our evangelism and as we begin to do our discipleship with people. Another feature of it is that we wrote it so it would work with other courses, things like Alpha and Christianity Explored. One of the things we were finding was that we were doing Christianity Explored with people and they were still interested in finding out about Jesus, but they weren't yet sort of ready to commit to him. And so we wanted another course that would fit with that. And so you can run it either before something like Christianity Explored or afterwards, and they kind of work together. So, whenever we go to the Gospels, we go to Mark's Gospel, because that's the connection, certainly with Christianity Explored. And the format, too, can work in that way. You can run it in that with a meal and a talk and a discussion, much as you run those other courses. But also, we designed it in a way that could be, you can run it with someone over a cup of tea. And we were quite keen for it to work for people that don't see themselves as preachers or evangelists, just kind of ordinary Christians that can just sort of work through the questions. There are paragraphs of explanation, so that you don't have to know all the answers to the questions yourself, but you can just take people through the story in a way that introduces them to Jesus and to that hope of a world that we all want.